Hello friends, Anuradha Dhawan here, and this session I'm going to review with you recall-based MCQs which were there in the subject of ophthalmology in FMGE June 2021 exam. We'll be discussing these together. So friends, as you know, these questions, they are based upon the recall by the students. So the question statement or the choices may not be exactly similar to what was there in the exam, but they are, we have tried to compile the maximum number of questions which were there in the exam. So let's go through them one by one and let's see what is the right answer to these questions. Now, discussing the first MCQ. So there was this question in which a young boy complains of itching, watering of eyes, and rhinorrhea. Okay. So on examination, the following image is seen. What is the diagnosis? The choices given were trachoma, vernal keratoconjunctivitis or VKC, bacterial conjunctivitis, acute conjunctivitis. So I think this question was quite straightforward question. Now, when there is history of itching and the watery discharge from the eyes, the watery discharge from the nose, rhinorrhea. So this goes in favor of the allergic type of conjunctivitis. And the image which was given here was very, very characteristic, in which you could see the giant papillae giving cobblestone appearance to the upper tarsal conjunctiva. Now this picture is characteristic of choice B, that is vernal keratoconjunctivitis, or also called VKC or spring catarrh. Now, if we look at the other choices, acute conjunctivitis is a non-specific thing because most of the infectious conjunctivitis, they can be acute, chemical conjunctivitis can be acute. Bacterial conjunctivitis will always have purulent or mucopurulent discharge, okay, and itching is not that prominent. Then if we talk about the choice A, trachoma. Now in trachoma, the itching can be there, but we know the hallmark sign of trachoma is follicles, not papillae. And what we saw in this image, which was there in the exam, you could see these giant papillae. So the right answer to this question should be vernal keratoconjunctivitis or VKC, right? Moving on to the next question. A person suffers injury to eye with vegetative matter or leaf few days ago and has now developed pain and photophobia. What could be the most likely cause? Okay, so what are the choices which are here with us? Fungal keratitis, acanthamoeba keratitis, bacterial keratitis, herpes zoster. Okay, now all these choices are pointing towards keratitis or corneal ulcer. Okay, the features of pain and photophobia are hinting towards the corneal involvement. Okay, out of these, if there is injury to the eye with a vegetative matter, something like tree twig or leaf, that is the most likely risk factor for development of fungal infection, fungal keratitis. Okay, so out of these choices, if there is injury with a vegetative matter, it is your fungal keratitis or fungal corneal ulcer which is most likely to develop. Right now, if we go through the other choices, choice B, acanthamoeba keratitis, the risk factor is contact lens use with poor hygiene. Bacterial keratitis, the most common risk factor is trauma, but not necessarily vegetative. When it talks about vegetative matter trauma, then fungal is most likely to occur. Okay. Herpes zoster, we know herpes zoster involvement is usually seen in immunocompromised patients. No such history was given in this statement. So the most probable answer going by the history in this statement is fungal keratitis. Moving to the next question, a newborn child presents with watering and on examination, the following image is seen. What is the most probable diagnosis? So here again, an image is given to you and a brief history is given. Let us see what are the choices. A, megalocornea, B, buphtalmos, C, congenital cataract, D, congenital dacrocystitis. Now, a newborn child with watering. Okay. Now, this kind of picture is there in the history. If we see the image, we can notice what is the most prominent feature which we are noticing in this image. You can see the eyeball is enlarged, especially the right eye. And both eye cornea, they appear quite big sized cornea. Okay, so big sized cornea with big sized eyeball, right? newborn child with watering. Okay, so now we have these features, and now let's go through the choices one by one. If I start with the choice D, congenital decrocystitis means that there is obstruction of the nasolacrimal duct since the birth. Because of this, there is infection in that area, sac area. So in that case also there will be watering and there can be discharge, but there is no reason of this image which is being seen over here, no reason for large sized cornea or large sized eyeball. Congenital cataract, if we talk about again in congenital cataract, the cornea size should be normal. And if we look at the image, we do not see any opacity. Cataract should cause white reflex in the pupillary area or opacification, which should be seen in the pupillary area. But if we see here, we do not see any opacity. The lens appears to be clear. So choice C is ruled out. Buophthalmos. Buophthalmos means congenital glaucoma. Congenital glaucoma is characterized by typical triad of symptoms: watering, photophobia, and blepharospasm. Along with large-sized cornea, this cornea can be hazy or clear with large-sized eyeball. So this seems to fit the picture which is given over here. Choice A, megalocornea. Megalocornea means the size of the cornea is more than the normal. So yes, in this case, again, the size of the cornea is more than normal. But if it is only megalocornea, then it is less likely to cause any watering. There is no reason for watering and there is no reason for large-sized eyeball. So the most appropriate answer to this question, newborn with watering with large-sized eyeball, large corneas, is buophthalmos or congenital glaucoma. So that is the right answer to this question. Now we move on to the next question. A lady suffers sudden painless loss of vision with worsening of pain on eye movements. A relative afferent pupillary defect is present. On perimetry, there is a central scotoma in the involved eye. What is the most likely diagnosis in this case? So again, a clinical scenario has been given in this question. A lady, sudden painful loss of vision. So onset is sudden and painful, with worsening of the pain on the eye movements. So pain of the eyeball increases when the eye movements are there. Relative afferent pupillary defect is present. Central scotoma. Okay, now let's go through the choices. A, optic neuritis. B, papilledema. C, retinoblastoma. D, central retinal vein occlusion. Now, if I go from the choice D, in central retinal vein occlusion, sudden loss of vision can occur, but there is no reason for pain. Loss of vision in central retinal vein occlusion is painless. Okay. Relative afferent pupillary defect can be present, but there is no pain associated with central retinal vein occlusion. So that is ruled out. Choice C, retinoblastoma. Now, retinoblastoma, this is not the age group and it will not cause a sudden loss of vision. Okay, we know the clinical presentation, the clinical age group of retinoblastoma is totally different. So it is not going according to this clinical scenario. Papilledema. Papilledema means disc edema due to increased intracranial pressure. Okay, so in these cases, in the early stages of papilledema, the vision is normal. On examination, you will find there is bilateral disc edema or swelling of the optic disc, but vision in early cases is normal, and even pupillary reactions are normal in the cases of papilledema in early stages. It is only if it is very chronic, then there is the change. Type of the visual field defect which we see in the cases of papilledema is enlargement of blind spot. So papilledema is also ruled out. So we are left with the right choice, which is optic neuritis. Okay, because optic neuritis, the visual loss is associated with the pain because there is inflammation of the optic nerve and the optic nerve sheaths. Okay, the optic nerve sheath is in contact with the muscles, especially the superior rectus muscle. So when the eyeball moves, especially upward movement is there, the pain can worsen. Okay, the optic nerve involvement will be associated with relative afferent pupillary defect, and on perimetry in optic neuritis we can have central scotoma. So right answer in this clinical case scenario is your choice A, or optic neuritis. Fine. Let's go to the next question. So there were a lot of questions based upon the, in which short history was given, a lot of clinical based questions, I would say. Okay. Now, what is this? A 3-month-old child presents with watering and discharge, which increases on pressing the inner corner of the eye. Right? What is the best management of his condition? What are the choices with us? A, syringing, B, sac massage, C, decrocystorhinostomy, D, probing. Okay. Again, a child, what is the age group of the child? So here, that is the most important thing to note. That is 3-month-old child. Watering and discharge, which increasing or pressing the inner corner of the eye. Okay. So this case is a case of congenital nasolacrimal duct obstruction. Why I am saying so? Because no other feature is given, but watering and discharge, which is increasing on pressing the sac area, lacrimal sac area, which is there in the inner corner of the eye. Okay. The options are asking us to choose the best management for this condition. The choices are syringing, sac massage, DCR, probing. Now, in these cases, the management option depends upon what is the age of the child, because in most of the children, the NLD obstruction is relieved by sac massage only, usually within 1 year of age, So what is the protocol? What are the guidelines? Till 9 months of age, we do sac massage and give topical antibiotics if there is discharge. Okay. If this watering or the obstruction is not relieved even till 9 months, then between 9 months to 4 years of the age, we go for syringing and probing. The procedure of syringing and probing is combined, in which we open the obstruction by doing the probing and syringing. If even then it is not relieved, and now the child has reached an age of 4 years. So only after 4 years of age, when the facial development is complete, bone development is complete, we go for surgery, which is DCR or decrocystorhinostomy, in which an opening is made in the middle meatus. Okay. So here the age of the child is 3 months. So I have to choose the treatment based upon the age. So till 9 months, the treatment of congenital nasolacrimal duct obstruction is sac massage. It is also known as Krigler massage. Due to hydrostatic pressure, there is opening of the NLD occurs, the canalization of the NLD becomes normal, and the child is relieved of the obstruction. So sac massage is the right answer to this question. Moving on to the next MCQ. A person with brain lesion presents with macula sparing homonymous hemianopia. What could be the site of lesion? So here they have told you, they have described which type of visual field defect is there, and we have to mark the site of lesion in the visual pathway. Let's go through the choices. A, optic tract, B, optic chiasma, C, occipital cortex, D, optic nerve. Okay. So macula sparing homonymous hemianopia. Okay. Now, if I start from the choice A, optic tract does causes homonymous hemianopia, but even the macular fibers are involved. So choice A is ruled out. B, optic chiasma. When there is lesion in the optic chiasma, usually it is the central part of the optic chiasma, then it causes bitemporal hemianopia, which is heteronymous type. Bitemporal hemianopia, heteronymous type. Again, macula is not spared. So optic chiasma choice is also ruled out. Choice C, occipital cortex. Okay. Now, occipital cortex lesions, they cause homonymous hemianopia. But here in occipital cortex, a special thing is there, that the area which is representing the macular fibers, that is supplied by the 2 blood vessels, that has a dual blood supply, posterior cerebral as well as middle cerebral artery. So most of the lesions in the occipital cortex, they are associated with posterior cerebral artery lesions. So in cases of occipital cortex lesion, since macular area has dual supply, so it is spared. It is most of the time spared. So it is your occipital cortex lesion in which you will find macula sparing homonymous hemianopia. Okay. Now, optic nerve is clearly ruled out, because in the cases of optic nerve, it will cause only monoocular field loss. It will not be homonymous type. Okay, so here we are clear about the choice. Occipital cortex lobe lesions, they are the area in the visual pathway in which you will see macula sparing homonymous hemianopia. Now we go on to the next MCQ. Again, a clinical case scenario along with an image. So most of the MCQs, they were like this in ophthalmology. A lady presents with pain, proptosis, orbital swelling, and loss of vision. On examination, the given image is noted. What is the most likely diagnosis? Choice A, preseptal cellulitis, B, orbital cellulitis, C, blepharitis, D, staph. Now here, what we have in the history, there is pain, proptosis means protrusion of the eyeball, orbital swelling, loss of vision. Very important point over here, loss of vision. Okay. Now in the image, what are we seeing? We are seeing there is orbital swelling. Okay. There is lid swelling. Eyeball is protruding out due to proptosis. Okay. There is conjunctival chemosis. Pupil is dilated. And in the history, they have told loss of vision is there. Okay. Now, if I go through the choices, start with the choice D, stye. Stye we know is the external hordeolum in which there is a painful swelling on the lid, okay, which is associated with the hair follicle, eyelash. Now, in stye, there is no loss of vision, there is no proptosis, there is no orbital swelling, only lid swelling is there. So, stye is ruled out. Blepharitis means inflammation of the lid. Okay, inflammation of the lid. Again, in blepharitis, there will be no proptosis, no loss of vision. Okay. Orbital cellulitis. Yes, orbital cellulitis is a condition in which there is infection which has now involved the soft tissues which are present beyond the orbital septum. Okay, so it has gone deeper. So all the soft tissue infection is there. So that is why there is proptosis, orbital swelling, and it can involve the nerves also. It can cause ophthalmoplegia, that is limitation of the extraocular movements. It can cause loss of vision due to optic nerve involvement, as well as there will be RAPD, that is a relative afferent pupillary defect. Okay, so it is the choice B which is fitting into this clinical case scenario and based upon this image. A, why it is not A? Because again, preseptal, as the word is suggesting, that here there is infection of the soft tissues, but preseptal, in front of the orbital septum, not beyond the orbital septum. Okay, again in preseptal cellulitis, there will be no loss of vision, there will be no ophthalmoplegia. Okay, so here the right answer based upon the history which was given in the question, based upon the image which was given, is orbital cellulitis. Moving ahead, now this was the question in which they had asked VY procedure is used for correction of. Choices given to us were symblepharon, entropion, ectropion, ankyloblepharon. So friends, VY procedure is a type of surgery which is used for the correction of ectropion, especially for scatricial ectropion. Okay, so in this we make incision in the form of V, and then when the sutures are applied, they are applied in the form of Y shape, which brings about correction of the ectropion. So this particular surgery or procedure is used for the correction of ectropion, in which there is outward turning of the lens. Okay. Now, coming to the next question, this here again, there was a short clinical statement. A girl has ptosis, which decreases on sipping fluids and eating food. Okay, so they have already told you diagnosis. There is a ptosis, that is drooping of the lid, but this ptosis is decreasing whenever that girl is having some fluid or eating food. Okay, what is the most likely diagnosis? The choices were blepharophimosis syndrome, complicated ptosis, Horner syndrome, mechanical ptosis. Now, if we see the choices, all these, they are associated with ptosis or drooping of lid, but this particular feature in which ptosis decreases on eating food is a feature of complicated ptosis. Now, which type of complicated ptosis actually? That is known as Marcus gun jaw winking phenomena, or also known as synkinetic ptosis. Synkinetic. Why this is so happening? In this particular condition, there is aberrant connection between the third nerve and the fifth nerve. Okay, so whenever there is jaw movement, the movement of the pterygoid muscles, when the patient is eating food, now whenever there is movement of the pterygoid muscle, there is also contraction of the LPS, that is levator palpebrae superioris. Okay, so that is why when the patient will be chewing food or even will be moving the jaw, the lid will also move up. Okay, otherwise in ptosis the lid is drooping down, but here the lid will move up when the patient is eating food or moving the jaw. So this is feature of complicated ptosis. Which type of complicated ptosis? Actually, as I told you, Marcus Gunn jaw winking ptosis or synkinetic ptosis. The other choice is mechanical ptosis or Horner syndrome, in which there is mild ptosis, or in blepharospasmosis syndrome. This particular feature is not seen, so that is why B was the right answer to this question. Moving on to the next question. A child with history of malnutrition was examined and following image of the eye was seen. What is the most likely diagnosis in this case? Again, in which a short history was given and an image was given. So this question was there. So what are the choices with us? A, anterior staphyloma, B, corneal opacity, C, ophthalmos, D, megalocornea. Now here a child, history of malnutrition. So history of malnutrition means there is vitamin deficiency, most likely vitamin A deficiency, due to which the ocular surface is not healthy. We know vitamin A deficiency, xerophthalmia, it is associated with conjunctival xerosis, corneal xerosis, can lead to keratomalacia, more prone to corneal ulceration. So in the image, if we see, what are we seeing in this image? So in the image, if you notice, you can notice there is the opacified cornea. Now this opacified cornea is protruding out, ectatic opacified cornea, a case of anterior staphylomas, which has resulted most likely as a result of complicated corneal ulceration, which can be there in a patient with malnutrition. Okay, so going by the history, going by the image, we can mark the right answer over here, anterior staphylomas. Talking about the rest of the choices, corneal opacity. Corneal opacity alone will not have this protruding or bulging of the cornea. Okay, ophthalmos, we know ophthalmos, the cornea is large sized. The eyeball is large sized, but cornea is not protruding out. Okay, so in ophthalmos, the cornea does not protrude out, it is large sized. Megalocornea, again, it is a large cornea, but it will not protrude out. So this is a case of anterior staphylomas, and the right answer to this question is anterior staphylomas. Okay. Now the next question was, a person has a vision of less than 3/60, but more than 1/60 in his better eye. What is the type of blindness he has? Okay, so they have given you a range and you have to identify which type of blindness this person will be categorized in. Social blindness, economic blindness, legal blindness, total blindness. Now going by the WHO criteria, if I start with the choice D, total blindness means there is no light perception. Legal blindness is when the vision is between 1/60 to light perception. Okay. Economic blindness is defined as when the vision is less than 6/60 but more than 3/60. And social blindness is when vision is less than 3/60 but more than 1/60. So going by that, this particular range which they had given, the right answer to this question is social blindness, that is vision less than 3/60 but more than 1/60. Okay. Going ahead, what is the most common treatment for recurrent pterygium? So this time they asked a question on pterygium, but not image based. They have asked about the most common treatment for recurrent or most appropriate treatment for recurrent pterygium. Okay. A, observation, B, simple excision, C, conjunctival autograft, D, mitomycin C. Okay. Now here, if you see, A, observation is done only for early cases of pterygium, in which pterygium is very small and not encroaching in the pupillary area. Okay. Simple excision of pterygium again can be done for a small pterygium, but simple excision is associated with recurrence. So if already the pterygium is recurring, it is again occurring after a surgery. So you will not go for simple excision this time. Choice C, conjunctival autograft. Yes, so that is the very good treatment for recurrent pterygium, because you are not leaving a bare area. You are putting a healthy conjunctival autograft so that pterygium does not recur. Okay. Another choice for recurrent pterygium is mitomycin C, but mitomycin C is avoided. In comparison to mitomycin C, the choice C is a better option, because use of mitomycin C has various side effects or complications. It can lead on to, various kind of, it can lead to glaucoma, it can lead to even perforation. So here the best treatment among these choices for recurrent pterygium will be conjunctival autograft, which is the right answer to this question. Okay. Now going ahead, a patient is diagnosed with complicated cataract, and on slit lamp findings, which were there, are shown in the given image. What is the type of cataract seen in this case? Now this question, a little bit, this is there. Some people have mentioned that they have just mentioned, given the image and the we had to identify. Some are saying that it was mentioned as a complicated cataract, and then you have to mark that which type of cataract. So whatever is the case, so let us discuss this question. So here in this image, you can notice if you look at the slit, which is based upon which is showing you the lens. Okay, now this is the interior part of the lens, which is towards the cornea. Okay, this is the cornea, this is the interior part of the lens towards the cornea. Now interior part of the lens is clear, the center of the lens is clear. Okay, it is only the posterior part which is showing the opacification. So opacification is in the posterior part. Okay, now let us see what are the choices. Anterior subcapsular cataract, no, because interior part there is no opacification. Nuclear cataract, it should be opacification in the center, which is not there. Posterior subcapsular, yes, it is the posterior area, posterior subcapsular area, which is showing the opacity. Cortical cataract will show opacities in whole of the peripheral area. So here most of the area is clear. It is only posterior subcapsular. So right answer to this question based upon this image will be posterior subcapsular cataract. Okay, so complicated cataract, posterior subcapsular cataract. So this is the right answer to this question. Okay, then there was an MCQ. A man suffered trauma to the right eye with a punch. Which of the following will be the most likely to occur in this case? So trauma with the punch. So trauma with the punch means a blunt trauma, quite forceful blunt trauma. So among the choices, which is the most likely to occur in this case? Inferior orbital wall fracture, medial wall fracture, lateral wall fracture, subluxation of the lens. So here, if we go from the choices that most likely to occur, because whenever there is blunt trauma to the orbit, okay, the weakest part of the orbit is the floor of the orbit. Okay, and that is the part which gives away, and there is what we call as blowout fracture of the orbital floor. Okay, so going by this, in any blunt trauma, most likely out of these choices, it will be inferior orbital wall fracture which will be occurring. Okay, medial wall is the second most common. Lateral wall of the orbit is quite thick, so that usually does not go if there is a punch on the front. Okay, similarly, subluxation of the lens is less likely to occur. Mostly it is a rosette cataract which develops due to blunt trauma. So we have to mention what is most likely or most common occurrence which can occur based upon this question, which is your choice A. Okay. Okay, then next MCQ, a child aged 10 years is having amblyopia in one eye. What is the best treatment in this case? Choices: A, observation, B, occlusion, C, penalization, D, none of the above. So I've written choices which I could gather. So here, amblyopia is given to you, then age group is told 10 years. So what should be the best treatment? Amblyopia means there is suppression of vision without any organic cause. Okay, so observation is not to be done, because otherwise this amblyopia will become permanent. After 14 years of the age, if the amblyopia correction is not done, then you cannot increase the vision by any other method. Okay, so this child is age 10 years, so observation is wrong choice over here. Occlusion, yes, occlusion means patching of the better eye so that you are stimulating the eye which is suppressed. So occlusion is the best method for the treatment of amblyopia. Penalization. Penalization is in which we atropinize the better eye. Okay, so that also gives a benefit where the child is not ready for occlusion. But if we talk between choice B and C, B is the best method. Okay, none of the above, of course, that is not the right answer. So here for a 10-year-old child who is in amblyopia, occlusion is the best treatment. Occlusion is the best treatment. Okay. Okay, moving to the next question. So this was again an image-based question. What is the most common finding seen in the fundus of a patient with diabetes of more than 20 years duration? Okay, a patient who is a diabetic, already more than 20 years duration, fundus image was given here. So what is the most common finding seen? Non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, central retinal artery occlusion, central retinal vein occlusion, proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Now, based upon the recall, it was the fundus photo in which lot of cotton wool spots were there and the findings of non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy were there. So going by this, in which you see there are hemorrhages, there are cotton wool spots, but no neovascularization, then the choice A becomes the right answer to this question, that is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Okay, patient with more than 20 years duration, most common finding. Proliferative, if there was new vessels. Okay, then central retinal artery occlusion, this is not the picture, there will be white retina with the cherry red spot. CRVO, there will be tomato splash appearance, lot of retinal hemorrhages. So here the right answer is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Okay. Going ahead, so this was another probable question. What is the diagnosis from the given fundus image of a diabetic patient with painless loss of vision? So here, most likely in the history, they had mentioned painless loss of vision, and there was a fundus picture of in which there was this splash tomato appearance was there. Okay, so if this was the question and the image, then here, if we go through the choices, proliferative diabetic retinopathy, non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, central retinal artery occlusion, central retinal vein occlusion. So going by this image in which there is painless loss of vision with fundus picture of multiple flame-shaped and dot plot retinal hemorrhages, then it is a picture of central retinal vein occlusion. So probably these two images or these two questions were there in the form of image and the statement-based question. Okay. Okay, going ahead, the next question is, which of the following is the gold standard for measuring intraocular pressure? And the choices given were pulsar tonometer, Short's tonometer, Goldman applanation tonometer, none of the above. So this was pretty straightforward question. Gold standard method for measuring intraocular pressure is Goldman applanation tonometer. Okay, so pulsar is also applanation, but that is not the best method. Short's tonometer is an indentation method, again not the best method. The best method or the gold standard method is Goldman applanation tonometer. So this was quite straightforward question. Then next question, it was an integrated question because they had shown an image of the eye, but this can be like, medicine plus ophthalmology question. A person with jaundice and tremor shows the following finding in the eye. What is the diagnosis? Wilson's disease, Huntington's chorea, heavy metal poisoning, Sydenham chorea. Okay. Now, a patient who is having jaundice, that is hepatic features. Okay. Tremors, that is neurological features, and finding in the eye. So what is the finding in the eye? You can notice over here this KF ring, which is due to the copper deposition in the Descemet's area. So you have eye features. Okay, so this fits into the diagnosis of Wilson's disease. KF ring in the eye, jaundice, tremors. So this combination of the features along with the image makes the right answer as Wilson's disease. Okay, so Huntington's, you will not see KF ring. In heavy metal poisoning, again, you have to rule out whether it is actually copper or anything else. Then Sydenham chorea, tremors can be there, but you won't see the KF ring. So going by the history and the image, the right answer is Wilson's disease. Okay. Then another question on the Wilson's disease, as I was told by the students that they had also asked for the gene responsible for the Wilson's disease. So that was another question related with that. So then there was a question on the mucormycosis. So probably they had given this kind of case scenario. A 60-year-old diabetic male patient with history of severe breathlessness, pyrexia, tachypnea, and generalized malaise was there. RT-PCR from a nasopharyngeal swab was positive for SARS-CoV-2 virus. On day 10, patient developed bilateral orbital swelling with right eye proptosis. What could be the most common organism involved? So this question was in which there was a classical history of COVID, and then the patient had bilateral orbital swelling. Now, in the setting of COVID, if the patient is having, now this patient is diabetic also, the patient must have been treated by steroids during hospitalization. So in this kind of clinical setting, if there is orbital swelling along with proptosis, so that goes in the favor of orbital mucormycosis, okay, or rhino-orbital mucormycosis. So most common organism involved here, we have to think of mucor. Okay, not any other fungus. Aspergillus candida is unlikely. And then there can be in the history, if they had mentioned that what was the KOH smear or what was the finding suggestive of that, so that indicated mucor. So mucor was the right answer to this question. Okay, so this was the about 20 questions which I have compiled based upon the recall by the students. Okay, so most of these questions were unambiguous with the clear answers, as you have seen. So if there is any further refinement as we go, if I get any more questions, so I'll be reviewing them with you. Okay, and you know my email and Telegram, you can always clear your doubts and queries by contacting me. So thank you, friends. So this was a quick session about the ophthalmology recall MCQs, which were there for FMG June 2021. Wish you all the best, friends. Wish you all the friends. And my friends, those who have recently appeared for the exam, so please give yourself a good rest, a good relaxation. You really deserve that. Okay? All the best and my best wishes to you.